I'm a diver, and so when I first went diving in the Red Sea, you could buy from one of the kiosks disposable cameras in a pre-prepared casing that you could open and put in other disposable cameras afterwards, so it was a reusable casing. And that I was hoping to be able to bring some of those photos, but they were printed out and I couldn't find them. So from the cosplay perspective, these photos had started appearing, and I was like, well, how are these people doing this? And so one person said that they'd made their own casing, and there's a couple of ways of doing that, involving things like Ziploc bags, and one particularly clever person with a plastic tube. There's cheap ways, there's tutorials for it online. I don't really know how safe they are. Personally, I wouldn't risk any worthwhile equipment in something that I made myself. But you know, that's your choice too, because these can be a cheap alternative, basically, working with something you've already got. Viable casings. You know, these are a selection of what you can sort of get. That one up there in the red is kind of what I had with the disposable camera back when. Various different camera brands do supply underwater casings for their cameras, so you can get hold of them if you want something official, but they tend to cost quite a bit of money because people think it's a little bit lucrative business, even though nobody really cares. There's types of cameras. So the casing is all about putting land cameras in the water, but as a diver, I looked at it from the other perspective of using an actual diver's camera, and the camera that I have is the Sea Life DC 1400, which looks like that. Now, I don't have the flash guns and the strobe, which are sort of more useful when you're doing sort of deeper water and you need more light. Really, with cosplay photography, you're only going to be doing it in shallow water, so you don't need to sort of kit yourself out with 800 pounds worth of lighting either side. You can just use sort of, I mean, this camera that came with the casing and the camera inside, and it cost me about 500-600 quid. Go to the next slide for a minute. It should have some. These are the pictures, not that I took, but promo pictures that come with the description of this camera. So if you just click through, there's a couple of them. And so, you know, understanding the thing about diving cameras is that they're designed to capture these sort of close-up images. And so that in terms of range, like if you get a really powerful land camera, you've got fantastic range in terms of like quality of the photo. If I took a picture of say something that's up in that corner, I could really get a high focus on it. But with underwater cameras, everything is designed to be X distance away, and sort of you get more expensive ones, really expensive ones, and then you can get sort of the distance. But most of them are only designed to be a few feet away at best. I think there's another photograph. Yeah, there's that one. And then if you click through to the next one, costume choice. Now, tricky. Reacting with water. If you're going to use something like a lycra, then it's kind of like a bathing suit. But all I've ever done is kind of try by eye. I mean, that there is cotton jersey PVC, and the dark pink details are done in fabric paint. Now, I suspected that they run in chlorinated water, or at least get bleached. But when I came out of the water, they were absolutely fine. So my best advice for sort of testing that's a cotton and satin, and it was completely fine. If you wanted to sort of test your costume, get some chlorine in a bathtub. I haven't really done anything by testing. I've just sort of just dived in and gone for it. So again, those two were kind of made to go in water. This wasn't. I did not make this to go in water, but it took in water anyway. So yeah, if you go to the next one. So, right, you can see, interestingly, lovely skirt and all on the surface. This is my hoop skirt. Hoop skirt didn't float. It's really funny. And so if you click through, you'll see that parts of this costume, the chiffon especially, is going see-through. That's something you also have to consider. Like in the previous slide, you saw the little white dress. Under that, I was actually wearing a yellow bra, and you can kind of see it in some of the photos because of course the fabric went see-through. So if you're going to use fabric that's going to end up going see-through, then please wear appropriate coloured underwear. Don't wear like a spotted bikini that's, I don't know, or male equivalent. See that hoop skirt doesn't float. It's just this random hoop skirt. you might have noticed is that the puff sleeves, where air was getting trapped inside, were sort of puffing and acting as the world's largest floaters. It was quite funny. Right, now these selection of pictures are all about water damage. Now, this was a costume that my friend wore where the fabric is lycra and a foil lycra, but the wings are foam board. And glitter glue. That did not go down well. So if you press click on. So this was one of the first things we were doing where one of the trickiest parts actually about underwater photography is getting everything underwater. So one thing we were trying was, you see how there's that little sort of seating area in the pool? She was sort of falling off of that to give herself gravity to help her pull herself under. And you see how the wings are just sort of flapped together and the costume going everywhere. And if you click here again, and then you see, that was another one of the same sort of shot. The wings coming off, the wings are flailing again. As I click here again, by the time we got to about half an hour, the wings had completely disintegrated. They were completely destroyed, so she wasn't wearing them anymore, which kind of spoiled the cosplay, but that's something that Photoshop can fix. So if you press again, you'll see that this is slightly brighter than the one before. If you click again, there should be a comparison photo that comes up. Oh no. Right. Well, if you remember on this one, the wings were flapped over. And what I've actually done is taken that wing that's no longer flapped over from the one before, to just try and put that element back into the costume. So click again. It should be comparable. Yeah. So there you see the comparison. And I've also brightened it and edited the colours a bit. So, because the thing about underwater is that it actually, the type of light, the colour of light that gets to underwater, even shallow water, is completely different as to what it is on land. So you have to account for that. It's like when you go into sort of a really badly lit room and it's all the places quite yellow and people come out looking like Simpsons underwater, people are going to start looking blue. Now, the camera that I've got, the diving camera, comes with settings that will start to counterbalance that for you, and I'll come back to that a little bit later. But most of it you can fix colour balance-wise in Photoshop. So, click again. And there you see where I just completely put the wings in from the other photos and just played around with it. Fortunately, the quality of the photo wasn't that great, so it doesn't look, well, it doesn't Photoshop at that point. Right, next slide. Things you take for granted on land. Press. Your wig. Makeup. Costume. Facial expressions. Pose. Breathing.
Yep.
When you're on land, you're just like, yeah, oh, you want a photo? Fine, that's okay, bye-bye. Underwater, it's really not that simple. First of all, with the wig, you've got to pin that down. I've got a video in a little bit of one of the wigs coming off while swimming. That was interesting. Makeup. Not all makeup is waterproof, and so you can't wear quite as much makeup. And so, when you're considering what costume's going underwater, you have to consider what's going to come off, what's not going to come off. And it's all very well saying, oh, well, I'll spray myself grey and cover myself in talcum powder and hairspray and God knows what as a fixer and it will totally work. But the problem is that it probably won't work. It will probably come off. And I'll show you the results of working with dirty water later because it really does affect the quality of the photos. Costume. Now, things that float and are floating go wee, spinny, swishy on land could work to your advantage, but by the time you're underwater, they could go everywhere. I've had some very funny examples. Facial expression. Now, I know people will stand in front of the mirror and they'll sort of practice their cosplay expressions and they'll be like, oh, I look good from this angle, doing this, and that's fine. It's actually a lot harder to be able to get that underwater because you start off above water and you've got to get underwater and you can't stay there. And so you've got to actually focus on getting yourself underwater, getting your costume underwater, keeping your wig on, focusing on what your face is doing, and trying not to drown. Because, and pose, you've got to know where all of your body parts are going. Like, when you jump in the water, you don't really care when you're when you're just going for a swim, you're just like wee. But you know, it's not. You know, you have to think, oh well, where are my limbs going to go? And then we were doing lots of practicing for this and doing all sorts of sort of diving in and sort of going from different angles to try and get the cosplayer to the bottom. Because the other thing is that this type of photography is really slow because the cameras are all slow. They can't keep up. And so it's really difficult. And like the cosplayer who is going underwater, if you've ever tried to stay underwater, you have to do quite a lot to keep yourself down there. And that's swimming. And then, of course, if you're in motion, then it's affecting the photos. There are bubbles everywhere. And so trying to sort of be still and stay deep enough to get a shot is actually a lot harder than people would take it for. So if we go to the next slide. Right. Click one more. On the subject of breathing, these are not attractive facial expressions. Really, they're not. Just try holding your breath and holding a facial expression at the same time. Just try it. Now imagine doing that underwater and having to think about where everything else is going. And you're running out of air. You can breathe it. So initially, you know, these are some of the initial tests. It's just like trying to find a way for her to be comfortable going underwater. And the way that we found was to breathe through your nose. So if we click on, cut the video, okay. Go to that one and play this one first. And hopefully this will work. There you go. See? Wait. It needs lots of hairpins. And then you can just, oops, here we go again. And then that one. What you'll see in this one is that the costume is billowing quite a lot here where the water's getting in. Now, if any of you have ever been interested in doing mermaid tails out of fabric and you want to go swimming in them, you have to keep a hole in the bottom, because otherwise what happens is that water gets in everywhere. Like if you imagine walking with your cosplay through a really strong head-on wind, it's worse than that, because water gets everywhere, it lifts everything. And so, like if you're going to do like a mermaid tail, or anything that's anything that's got holes in it needs to have a place for air to escape and water to escape, so that you're sort of still streamlined in the water. Otherwise, things are going to start falling off. Yeah, if we go back into the presentation. That one there, that one. And then clicker. So yeah, here we're having an example of the skirt that was there is now up there. and my skirt is also doing the same thing. Look, it's gone from here, it's going whee! Because floaty things are really great on land. They have volume and you look cool and you're doing it. When you're going underwater, water just goes whee! It says, you don't need dignity. Click again. Oh, I can show them. But yeah, so again, if you're focusing on it's just adding to the things you need to focus to. It's like getting parts of your costume under that need to go under. Here is one to do with breathing through the nose and going upside down. Click one more there. This was terrifying. I say that because has anyone ever actually sort of done that and sort of hooked your legs on the end of a pool and gone under like that? How'd it feel?
Horrible. Like you're falling backwards.
Yeah, because of course water's going up your nostrils due to gravity, so if you don't breathe out through your nose, you're going to drown. It's really that simple. So I would recommend if you're going to try that, do it very slowly and remember to breathe through your nose. But it can create some really lovely sort of anti-gravity effects. And so click through, we'll go to the next slide. You can also get, now this, you know, as I said, it's a slow process. It's not always, you know, great. You get a lot of dud shots, but sometimes you can get sort of these abstract things that when you're looking at it, you're like, what exactly am I looking at? I don't know, but I quite like it anyway. Feel free to join. There's chairs. Stand. conservative dance. Neil, packing box. Meep, meep, meep. Alright, next photo. Oh, good. What are you doing? So yeah, and, you can play around with poses. I mean, this was quite an interesting one where Betsy was sort of showing herself around in circles, and really have no idea what she's doing, and that's quite a lovely ask, but I'm so glad she's not here to show me. Oh, Joy!
This is the moment when she walks through the door.
But yeah, so you can play around with what we, and here sort of the bubble cloud that's created by the breathing and the movement is actually quite nice. So it's a really untried and tested area, and it's something that you can very much personalise and play around with. If you go to the next photo, I mean, this is something that's also very interesting. I mean, you saw earlier the picture of me in the pink dress, where there was actually quite a nice reflection of me in the surface of the water. Now that actually works both ways, and so you can see there that the effect is quite interesting and quite abstract. From an artistic point of view, you could do some really interesting things with that. If you've seen any other cosplay underwater photography, there was a really nice picture of a Misty and a Starmie, and so the Misty sort of doing sort of a back bend like that, and Starmie is just under her back, but her stomach is sort of pressed into the surface of the water, and there's a really nice reflection. And I would have shown it, but I'm sort of dubious about showing other people's photos in this panel. I couldn't get hold of some of them to get their permission. Next photo. Slide. Playing with orientation. Now, here's something we were just, playing around with sort of the whole Superman thing and on the surface and pushing off. And so, if you just click through, it will rotate. So, and then rotate it again. And you get sort of, you play around with it. Underwater photography gives you the room to play around with rotation in the same way that land cameras play around with the angle. Because changing the rotation can completely change the feel of the picture, and this is something, because of the floating aspect and the reflection aspect, this is something that isn't quite as accessible on land, and it makes it very interesting to do, especially from a post-processing perspective. Here are just a couple of photos where we were playing around with again poses, and the fact that this pool has these sort of strobe lights and that the effects those would do with sort of the casting shadows and stuff. These are just some examples just to look at because they're fairly pretty. I mean, that was, trying to do something with backlighting, how to do bleaching her out, no different. Playing, and we had a few where we were playing around with her swimming and trying to get some photos in motion. Go on. Oh, the most important lesson. Don't lend friends your camera. Oh, wait. Can we go back? Cool. Good, we can have to see the camera shot again. One thing you might notice about this is, look at the colour of his skin. It's kind of orangey. It's kind of like he's in a badly lit room. It's not because he's in a badly lit room, because the lighting is actually really good. But this is actually what my camera, an underwater camera set to shallow underwater lighting, looks like when it takes a picture out of water. Because of course it's doing the colour balance compensation, where it's trying to compensate for what colours of light are getting through. So it's already running the pictures through filters. And so when you're using it on land, it creates things like this. Go again. Things to keep in mind. Patience. Stay calm. Always bring a towel. You have to remain calm because, it's one thing to be breathing through your nose, having your eyes closed, and you're like, but it gets harder when you're trying to do things with your expression and your eyes open, because of course the chlorine's going to get in there and you can't see what you're doing. It's not like on that where you're just like, oh, I can see the world under the sea. You can't see anything. Under the sea. Right, next. Where can I do this? Warm water. Still water, clean water. Now, I say warm water because all of those photos were all taken in the same pool. And I wanted to be able to show you some that were taken in an outdoor pool, some that were taken in different places, but people were very unhelpful. And so I tried in my friend's massive outdoor pool, but it was freezing like, oh, this is quite cool, and I'll warm up if I swim around a bit. You can't be swimming around when you're doing underwater photography, especially if you're the photographer. You've got to get yourself underwater, hold, and control your buoyancy while trying to take the photo, rather than doing what nature is trying to tell you to do, which is float up and down and all over the place. And so in cold water, anytime you go into cold water, you instantly experience shock, whether you like it or not. And so if you're trying to stay underwater and stay still, you're actually going into a emotional shock. And it's really difficult to concentrate. And I say that because I was trying it. I was just like, I went under. I was just like, no. Came back up. I was like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm sorry. I can't. Still water. Still water, because otherwise you're going to get bubbles and ripples, and it's just interference in photos that you don't need. Clean water. Now this comes back to when I was saying about paint and dirtying the water. If you go on, I do have a couple of photos from when we tried to do it in the outdoor pool. You see the outdoor pool and then the bright colours. And once again, you'll notice that it's a slightly reddened photo because of the colour setting. Now, there had actually been a party in the pool the day before, and people had been getting into it with all their suntan lotion on. So it was quite murky, and you might be able to sort of tell that already. But if you click again, I mean, this is no more distant away than some of the photos from before, but already you can barely see her. And there's bits of debris and the murkiness that's caused from stuff coming off the costume. So you've got to be careful about thinking off. And so again, if you're thinking of taking your costume underwater, I would say that you test it and see if stuff does start to come off. And if it does start to come off, don't do it. Unless you don't mind it being ruined, and whoever's pool you're using doesn't mind you destroying their silver. Step back again. So, but then again, there's this sort of ethereal look, and again, there was a photo that some people might have seen of an Ayacon cosplayer from Final Fantasy VII, where I think she'd gone into freshwater, or it was some sort of natural place, and sort of she was in sort of like a ball, and I think it was meant to represent the live stream. I don't do Final Fantasy VII, but
Well, she gets buried, but basically buried in the crowd, puts it into a lake, and she sinks to the bottom.
so it's her funeral. Good time. But there's a really nice photo of that, and it's got this sort of blurred look to it, probably because the water is not clean, but it can really work. So it depends on what you're trying to shoot. It didn't work for what we were doing, and you'll note how the colours are sort of. If you click again, right, see the brightness of the colours. I know it's slightly reddish, but the dimness that comes from the dirty water it's unfortunate because bright colours are always fun. Click through. Experiment. Yeah. These are just some photos playing around with the surface of the water as opposed to just underwater, but it's always if you just click through the examples, then you see all the different effects you can get with the surface and just whatever you like. Now I know there's a picture of a Morrigan cosplayer. I think it's Morrigan. Red top, black hair, not the Darkstalkers one, where she'd had a balloon of water that had got popped, and there was a photo that's just the water cascading down. So that sort of thing you can do in and out cosplayer. I know a lot of Avatar cosplayers have started using that technique. But again, that's in and out of water. Playing around with what sort of stuff happens on the surface, jumping in and out. Abstract shots, orientation. I haven't really been looking at my DT, I probably should have done. Health and safety. Health and safety, that's a good one. Mainly from the perspective of, most people have been swimming in sort of a t-shirt or something at some point in their life. And like when I went in the big aerial dress, it wasn't as hard to move as people might think it would be. It was hard when I came out, when of course it's not just the weight of the dress, there's the weight of the dress plus all the water. That was a nightmare. But if you're going to do this in cold water, I would go to cold. And a lot of the freshwater, water around the UK is really cold. Diving off the UK is really, really cold. But if you are going to attempt it and you're going to go into sort of unchlorinated, untested water, then please be aware that there are health risks involved and waterborne diseases, and it might not be safe, and do your research in the area if that's what you're planning on doing. Be sensible. If it feels like it's too much and you need to stop, just stop. That's assuming you get the opportunity to do it. I think in terms of, well, Bexy wanted me here and tell you about how she fixed her wig afterwards, but the wigs that I've taken underwater, they smell of chlorine, and if you give them a couple of washes, as you would normally wash a wig, that tends to come out and they're actually fine after. I haven't experienced any particular badly frizzing, even taking curls underwater, they just burn back. In terms of the clothes themselves, none of the ones I've taken underwater have sustained any damage, whether it's from bleaching or any of that kind. I mean, the wings obviously did because they were foam board. It's like when you dip cardboard in water, it's going to fall apart. That's the kind of thing where you just should be sensible with that. If things are likely to fall off, if they're held on through Velcro or glue, then try tack stitching them down. If you don't want it floating off, secure it. Any questions? I can't really think of anything else to say on this subject. There's nothing else on my cheat sheet.
Camera full time?
How do you got props in the water? Is it easier not to have them?
Well, I haven't done them. I think I saw a picture of, I think it might have been a cloud cosplayer who had the Buster's sword underwater. He was kind of like doing that through the water and the surface was like here and the candle was there and it looked really good. It depends on what material it's made out of. Just dip it in the bath and if it disintegrates it's not going to last. But it might be like the foam board wings where you might get a few shots. With that sort of thing, be prepared for it to break apart. If you can't afford for it to break apart, don't do it. If you're thinking of retiring a costume, then it's a great excuse to destroy it.
Would you say that stuff like thermoplastics would be okay to take underwater?
I have no idea.
Just because they're plastic, I was assuming.
Thermoplastic.
Yeah.
Probably.
Fine.
Yeah.
I mean, considering Cameron was saying how she was running them under the cold shower, I presume they'd be fine.
Because it just depends on what type of thermoplastic. Because if
Yeah.
it's warm water, then they might.
But it also depends on what paints they've been treated with. It should be fine. But again, it's just one of these you can test out in your bathtub at home. I mean, yeah, you can't see what chlorine will do to it, but you can at least see whether the water itself will do the initial damage. Okay. Class dismissed. Thank you all for coming. One thing I would also point out about, as I said, I was supposed to have pictures of it, but they weren't there. The CLI camera that I had, you remember how it looked really clunky? That was actually just a casing, because it comes with its own casing and it has a little sort of camera about this big inside that you can use as a regular land camera. So if this was something you were thinking of experimenting with and you just wanted your basic handheld camera as well, you do get the 2-in-1 aspect, because it comes with all the instructions on its upkeep and that.
How much is that?
Mine was about £500–600. Money.
Ooh, free money.
Hey, you can help me up.